Okay, so we're going to start this lesson in standing, and just as you're standing there, just beginning to get a sense of the ground, how your feet are connecting to the ground, your weightedness. And do you have a sense of your head? Can you feel your weightedness through your feet and a sense of your head on top of your spine? And can you sense where's the top of your head? And you might even just bring your fingertips up and just play with finding the very tippy top of your head and noticing, does it feel like the top of your head is in the middle? Or is it a little tilted to the right or to the left? And once you have a sense of that, you can let your hands down. And sense into your neck. Sense the length of your neck. You might have a sense of it being a little lengthened, or you might have a sense of shortening in your neck. Just, maybe you can feel these things, maybe you can't. It's so amazing how valuable it is to the learning of the nervous system just to look for these things, just to ask these questions. And then bringing your attention to your whole spine. It's the forward curve in the neck and comes back to neutral through the middle of the thoracic spine. Forward curve in the low back and the sacrum and the pelvis. And sensing not just the back of the spine, but deep into the vertebral bodies that are really quite forward. They're really inside of yourself. Feel how that spine goes behind your belly, behind your lower belly into your sacrum. Really, the front of your spine is right about the back of your throat. We often don't think of our spine as being that forward in ourselves. And just sort of sensing this central axis in your body. As well as this downward pull of gravity. Again, feeling the weight through your feet. Feeling how gravity lives in you, lives in your experience. How do we organize ourselves upright with this constant pull of gravity? And you can just shift your weight a little bit forward and back. Feeling that central axis moving through space, forward and back. And then there's also this upwardness, kind of an upward pull. Russell likes to call it celestial gravity. I think there's actually a term in it, kind of an anti-gravity that we have, this desire to be upward. It's like a flower, that just keeps pushing through the earth and going upward. There's something in our nervous system that just invites us that way. So you have both this downward pull of gravity holding you on this earth and this invitation upward. See if you can sense that in yourself. It sort of creates a vitality. Think about when you're really tired. What do? Your head goes forward, you slump your shoulders, you sort of cave into the gravity because that upward vitality is missing in some way. And then sense the middle once more, right in the midline. And take your right and left hands and simultaneously bring them together in front of you like a prayer position. And just begin to just take your hands a little upward and downward. And just like they're gliding right in front of your middle, up and down. And you might take them up in front of your face. You might even take them above your head. You might find that as you go down, when you hit about the midline level, the horizontal midline, that your fingers want to point downward towards the floor. And then as you're coming back up, they might point upwards. Just really like you're drawing a line up and down on that midline. And then let your hands go. One last time, just shift your weight a little forward and back, as though you can feel that middle of yourself going forward and back. And you can notice, does it stay in the middle as you shift forward and back, or do you shift just a little left or a little right? Not making that wrong or not needing to fix it or correct it, but just noticing. Good. And then please lie on your backs. And just begin sensing the quality of yourself here lying on the floor. You can feel the contact of different parts and notice, where's your midline? How far is each shoulder blade from the midline? Is one shoulder blade a little closer or farther? Sense the back of your head on the floor. And is that point of pressure from the back of your head, is it right in the middle, or does your head roll a little left or right from middle? Is that your natural lying position? And then sense in front of you your sternum and breastbone, and sense what's middle there. And again, you might sense, you could even bring a couple of fingers up and just sort of place them where it feels like the middle of your sternum is in your midline. And then notice maybe you rotate a little bit left and right from that. And rest your hands down. And then bring your awareness to your breathing. And let's breathe through the midline. So imagine, and this can be a little unusual if you haven't done it before, but imagine as though you're breathing in through the top of your head and you're breathing the air in down to your lower abdomen. As if there's a balloon down there and you're filling it up with air so your lower abdomen is soft and it expands with the inhalation. And then as you exhale, you imagine that air coming up through your middle, all the way up and out the top of your head. Drawing the air in through the top of your head, down, filling up in that abdominal area. Breathing out through the top of your head. And as you breathe in, you may even allow yourself to sense as that imaginary balloon fills in your lower abdomen. It's in the lower part of your pelvis, near your pelvic floor. So it expands forward, it expands backward a little bit into your sacrum and low back, and it expands downward. So see if you could even imagine or actually feel just a little downward pressure into your pelvic floor with the inhalation And then it comes back to neutral, or sometimes to feel that as you breathe out, you might just very, very lightly contract a little bit in the pelvic floor, the vaginal and anus areas. And then as you breathe in, you can let those go and just imagine that little bit of downward pressure with the inhalation. And then let that image go and just imagine where your nose is in the midline, as though you're drawing a line, the middle of your forehead, down through your nose, between your lips and chin, down through your sternum, your breastbone. As you draw that line, is your belly button in the center of it, or is it a little off to the left or the right? So you're just imagining that you're drawing a line through the center of your pelvis, your pubic bone, right down between your legs. And you might notice if one leg or foot is a little closer to the midline than the other leg or foot. And again, it's not necessary to try to imagine yourself perfectly symmetrical. That would actually be a little more unusual than to discover your own asymmetries. And then please, one leg at a time, bend your knees up, bringing your feet to the floor. Just checking in with your feet. Are they in midline? Or where are they in relationship to midline? You have them, about hip width apart. You don't want them necessarily right together, but a nice stable place. And then interlace your hands behind your head. So first interlace your fingers and then bring them behind your head. And just slowly begin to lift your head just a little bit. Usually lifting the head is easier if you draw your elbows together and then you bring your elbows towards your legs and just feel, how does your head track through midline? So if there was like an imaginary piece of glass resting on the front of you, right, and you were keeping your nose and your chin and your forehead in the center of that. Just really tracking and using your eyes. You can keep them closed, but as you lift your head, sort of tracking your eyes down through the center of your chest, down your belly and pelvis, between your knees, and maybe even you can imagine seeing somewhere on the floor beyond your feet. And as you lift and lower your head, also tracking the middle of the back of you, you'll feel pressure between your shoulder blades and along your back, depending on how high you feel is easy and comfortable to lift your head. You can notice, does your nose wander a little bit to the left or the right? Feel the back of the pelvis and the sacrum as you lift and lower your head. Good. And then just pause. Leave that for a moment. You can let your legs down long. And bend your knees up again, please. Interlace your hands behind your head. And continue with the movement of lifting your head and attending to your midline, noticing and really intentionally taking your eyes downward as you lift your head, and intentionally taking them upward as though you're going to kind of look up towards your forehead as you lower your head down. And then see if it's possible to free your eyes from this movement by taking them in the opposite direction. So as you gently and lightly lift your head, see if you can take your eyes upward towards your forehead, or you might think about looking towards the ceiling. And as you lower your head, see if you can slide your eyes downward, like you're looking down towards your nose and your chin and your chest as your head lowers. Notice how you're breathing. When do you choose to inhale and when do you exhale? And then just a couple times lift your head and let your eyes follow, just lightly once or twice. And just rest your head down and keep your knees bent. Let your arms down. And then begin to sense into your pelvis, into the center of your sacrum there. And begin to explore just the very beginning of lifting your pelvis off the floor. So pushing down with your feet, you might feel your pelvis roll back a little bit and pressing through your feet, just letting the beginning of lifting your pelvis and lowering it back down. Feel how you organize your inhalation. Do you breathe in as you lift and out as you let it down? Maybe the other way seems more congruent with your movement. And of course, feeling the midline as your sacrum rolls, feeling a sense of the center of that, feeling the weight shift up through the center of your spine, between your shoulder blades. Noticing if you have the same amount of pressure through each foot. Do you tend to use your feet evenly or one more than the other? Just let that movement grow a little higher, as long as it's easy, comfortable. And as you lift your pelvis, let your eyes roll up in your head like you're looking up towards your forehead or up above your head. So above your head when you're lying is not the ceiling. That would be the ceiling technically in relationship to your position on the floor. The ceiling's in front of you. So above you would be as if you were standing. So your eyes roll up as your pelvis lifts, and you let your eyes roll down as you lower your pelvis back down. And then try it a few times, seeing if you can reverse your eyes. So lifting your pelvis and letting your eyes go downward as though you were going to look at your pelvis. And lowering your pelvis down and letting your eyes roll upwards. And still keeping in the background or the foreground this sense of midline. Your eyes are tracking midline. Your spine is tracking midline. Your pelvis. And then just a couple of times, let the eyes sort of roll the way that seems natural. Just lightly lift your pelvis and set it down. Just a couple times, up and down, up and down. Not so serious. And then leave that and pause for a moment with your legs up or down, whatever's comfortable for you. sensing yourself lying here. Your right sides and your left sides. How's this middle influencing you? And see if you can put your arms up sort of over your head, resting on the floor. They don't need to be straight up. They can kind of be in a Y position. Just what's comfortable for the shoulders, though, so that the floor is supporting you. So if they need to be more out to the side, that's fine. And then imagine that directly in front of you on the ceiling, a string is tied. And that string has two ends. One comes down to the right hand and one comes down to the left hand. And somebody pulls on that string, and very evenly your hands come up and together in the midline, so that your palms and fingers are touching each other. Just get a sense of that. Do that just a couple of times, bringing them up, touching, and bringing them back down to the floor. So they're going to come up in front of you towards the ceiling. Now lift up off the floor. Good. And back down. And you're just really imagining how precisely and evenly, if somebody was pulling a string and your hands were coming up sort of at the exact same rhythm and speed and touching right in the middle. And then next time they're up there, you can just leave them up there in midline, together, if you're able to keep them together. And begin taking your hands upward and downward on this middle line. So again, if there was a piece of glass sort of bisecting your right and left sides, your hands would be on either side of that glass, sliding downward towards your pelvis and upward towards over your head. So just imagining that you're drawing along that middle. And just noticing when do your hands and arms, waffle a little to the left or to the right. And then just lower your arms down, rest them at your sides. Just feeling into your body, sensing how this is influencing you. Where does your attention go? And then just imagine for a moment that your knees are open to the side and the soles of your feet are together. So don't do the movement yet, but just imagine that you're going to draw your feet up a little bit, put the soles of your feet together and drop your knees out to the side. Just imagine that you're going to slide your feet a little bit towards your pelvis and a little bit away from your pelvis. Not a big movement. See if you can imagine that movement first. And then slowly begin to find that position. So slide your feet up. And maybe your whole foot might not touch. It might just be your toes or just your heels. But somewhat with your feet, the soles of your feet approximated towards each other. And just see if you can very gently slide your feet away from you a little bit and towards your pelvis. And again, it might be just a couple of inches, doesn't need to be a big movement. But of course, feeling that midline. Feeling, is it easy for your feet, for you to have a sense that your feet are sliding on that midline? Again, maybe they really tend to go rightward or leftward. Maybe there's a sense that your pelvis tilts a little bit one way or the other. And notice the feeling inside when you notice those asymmetries. Is that okay with you? Is there something inside that says, oh, that's interesting? Or, there might be something inside that says, what's wrong with me? I'm not symmetrical. Notice how you're breathing. Still a good idea. And then let your legs rest. And then please roll onto your fronts. If you're able to, with your shoulders, put one hand on top of the other and rest your forehead on your hands. And just lying on your front, noticing again the middle of yourself, the middle of your forehead, sensing into the middle of your sternum, your pubic bone, your belly button. Again, sensing into the spine, the front of the vertebrae, as they come towards the floor inside of you. Going through the middle of your chest and through the neck, imagining the middle all the way through the top of your head. And then slowly and lightly lift your head as though you wanted to see upward. Feel the pressure tracking through the midline and lower, and just do this several times. Really let your eyes be active. Letting the eyes be active helps activate those back extensor muscles. So you're lifting your head, you're looking upward, and you're tracking how your head goes through the midline, the pressure of the midline through the front of yourself, what you can feel in your sternum, down into your pelvis, through your legs. And then a few times try lifting your head but looking downward towards the floor. And then as you lower your head, looking upward. Taking our head and eyes in the same direction are just old habits. So you might feel kind of an incongruency, a tightening in the neck that's not quite sure how to do this. Don't take it too seriously. Be playful, be light, be easy. And then let your eyes go a few times with your head and neck, lifting your head, looking upward, arching a little in your back, keeping your hands down for support. Good. And just pause for a moment. And then now widen your legs a little bit so your knees are a little further apart. And you want to try to bring your feet together along this midline. If you can bring your soles together, that's fine. You'll need to take your knees apart quite a bit. If that doesn't work for you, just sort of find a way to approximate the feet towards each other. And then you're just going to bring your feet up and down. So you'll bend your knees a little more so your feet come towards your buttocks, and then lowering them down towards the floor. Always sensing this midline. as though your feet are sliding along that glass. Good, and then see if you can bring your head in. So as your feet lower, lifting your head up, and as your feet come towards you, lowering your head down. Feeling your breathing, feeling that middle of yourself. And then can you reverse that so your feet and head come towards each other, meaning your feet come towards your trunk and your head lifts up, and your head and your feet go down together. And you're breathing and just keeping it light and playful. And can you also do this while taking your eyes the opposite direction? And if you can't, don't struggle with it, but if while you bring the back of your head and your feet together, you can look downward with your eyes. As you lower your head and your feet downward, can you look upward with your eyes? Just try that a couple of times. And then pause, just let it go. If it's comfortable to let your head rest on your hands, great. If you want to just turn your head to the left or the right side, that's fine too. Good. And then see if there's a way to rest either your forehead or your chin on the floor, and then slide your hands up so they're just a little bit above your head, not stretched out, elbows bent. Your palms are still near your head, but your head, if possible, is resting in midline. And then slide your knees apart and bring the soles of your feet together. And then see if you can slide your hands upward over your head. So, sliding like you're reaching above you, reaching up, keeping your fingertips kind of close together so they're at the midline, but they don't need to be touching. It's like your thumb and your index finger could be touching, but the palms are on the floor, and sliding them up and down, and then including your legs with that. So as your hands slide upward on the floor, your feet come towards you, and as your hands come back down, sliding towards your head, your feet come down towards the floor. You're just sensing this midline, reaching above it and below it with the feet, and breathing. And as you reach out with your arms, can you lift your head a little bit? So your feet and your head are coming towards each other, and you're reaching out in front of yourself. And then you slide your hands back towards you, lowering your head and lowering your feet. There you go. Great. Feeling the midline the whole time. Noticing if your jaw is soft. Your breathing is full. Good. And then just let that go. Roll onto your back. See how you're feeling now on your backs. Just resting into the floor, sensing into the midline, through your spine, your sternum, throat, nose, your eyes, sensing the midline as it extends above you, above your head, sensing it between your legs, down below your feet. And then place your hands in that prayer position, sort of right in front of your chest. So your thumb is resting in the midline of your chest and your fingers are pointing upwards towards your head. So remember, upwards is in relationship to your body, not to the room. So upwards would be towards your head, not the ceiling. And then begin to slide your hands up along your chest, up through the middle of your face. So just gently, kind of lightly touching as you slide up along the midline. Lightly touching your body, coming back down along the midline. As you come down, feeling that natural place for your hands to move and point downwards and continue sliding down over your belly, down over your sacrum and pubic bone. And just exploring the midline with your hands this way. Take them up over your head. Tracking with your eyes. And as your hands go downward, you might also lift your head and look downwards towards them, and as though your shoulders and arms are just continue going downwards, and it just invites your head to lift off the floor. And then taking them up. Just feel the softening in the chest as your head lifts. Good, and just pause for a moment. Bend your knees up, bend your legs up one at a time so your feet are flat on the floor. One more time, coming to the prayer position with your hands in front of you. This time including the same movement, taking your hands upward, but this time as your hands come up towards your head and over your head, lifting your pelvis a little bit. And then as you slide your hands back downward and your fingers point down towards your pelvis, lifting your head. Tracking with your eyes, up and down, right through the center of yourself. And just a few times, can you continue the same movement with your head and pelvis and hands? And can you take your eyes in the opposite direction? So as you lower your head, your hands come over the top of your head, let your eyes look downwards towards your pelvis. And as you lift your head and take your hands downward towards your pelvis, can you roll your eyes upward towards your forehead? breathing, jaw soft, having fun with the challenge. And a couple times lightly, just move everything in the same direction, just quick and light. It doesn't have to be a full motion, but just hands up and down, head up, pelvis up, eyes following, doing whatever's easy. Good, and then let it all go. Let it all go. And then we're going to continue this lesson in standing. So please roll to your sides and come up to standing, but really stay inside of yourself. Stay in your experience. Once you're standing, just getting a sense of your weightedness to the ground, feeling that gravity, feeling that lift, that celestial pull, feeling the center of yourself. Just shifting your weight a little forward and backward, just imagining that center, that central axis moving through space, forward and back. Pausing in the middle. And then bringing your hands in front of you in that prayer position. So symbolic of so many things around the world. All religions, all spirituality have this way of coming together, the right side and the left side, the male and the female. And then do the movement, taking your hands upward, upward over your head, following with your head and eyes. If you can do it with your eyes closed, fine. If you need to have them open for balance, do that. And then downwards, all the way down, bending your knees softly, taking your fingertips towards the floor. You might even find yourself touching the floor. And bring your feet apart a little bit. Just tracking that midline above you and below you. And just pausing in the middle next time you're there. Staying in that sense of midline, you can let your hands down. Just walking forward, feeling how you take that midline, just a few steps forward and a few steps backwards. Just taking that into some movement, a little bit forward and backward. Try it with your eyes open. Try it with your eyes closed if you're able. See how it changes. Coming back to the middle, just standing. One last time, getting a sense of that breath that we did in the beginning, as if you're breathing in, drawing the air in through the top of your head, down through your midline, into your lower abdomen, filling that imaginary balloon forward, backward. Just that little gentle pressure downward into your pelvic floor. And then exhaling through the middle of yourself and out the top of your head. Just having a sense of that a few times. And then just walk around. Just get a sense of yourself. Begin to connect to the room around you, to the space around you, to the other people. There's a few words that you want to share into the room, into the space. Please do so. And we'll take a few moments and then come back to sitting.